Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special free agency edition of the Point Forward podcast. The Milwaukee Bucks had a very busy Monday into Tuesday, whatever the timeline is. It was chaotic, crazy, and we have a lot of developments to discuss. A lot of familiar faces back. My name is JR Radcliffe, host of the show. Jim Owczarski, Bucks beat reporter for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, joins me to talk about everything that we have seen. We'll jump right in. There's a lot of little moves that have happened. A lot of guys back. Gary Trent apparently is coming back for almost no money at all. Taurean Prince, Kevin Porter Jr., Bobby Portis, they're all back. But right off the top, the biggest news of the day was the Bucks acquiring Myles Turner from the Indiana Pacers, a center, a needed commodity on this team. But maybe even more shocking is the move that they had to do. They had to undertake to make that happen, and that is waiving Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard no longer or will no longer be a member of the Milwaukee Bucks. Of course, he tore his Achilles in the playoffs last year. He was facing a long rehab, but I think we could have seen a scenario easily where he's back by crunch time next season. And instead, the Bucks are taking the final 5 years of his contract and stretching it over 5 years. It is Bobby Bonilla Day NBA edition here on July 1st. Jim, the decision to waive him, I think, probably is sort of the catalyst for everything else that they're able to do, because that frees up the money to make some moves. But also, what a call! What a tough decision to make. So, what were the factors in play when the Milwaukee Bucks are sitting down and saying we're ready to be done with the Damian Lillard experience altogether? What do you think got them to that point?
Yeah. This is interesting. I mean, to John Horst's credit, this idea or concept was not really at least publicly bandied about, and that fits John Horst, right? Like he has made big moves in silence, right? Be it the Dame acquisition, be it Drew Holiday in 2020. So a couple things. The Bucks were not going to be able to get a medical exemption for Dame. I know fans thought about that. But basically what that means is the league, an independent doctor would have to say, oh, Dame is out till next July 15th. And Achilles, for as bad as they are, JR, they're not 15, 16-month injuries. So they were not going to get financial relief in that way, the ability to sign a player in that way. On a bigger level, Dame, I think this experiment would have ended this summer anyway, JR, had the Bucks not won the title or gone to the finals. I think
interesting.
The 2-year run with Dame, I mean, league sources had been telling the Journal Sentinel, myself, others, that they tried. They gave it a shot. It was a 2-year run. The Bucks were going to be doing some things to get under these aprons, under the techs. Chris Middleton was the first thing. I don't think that's an indictment on the team or the person or anything. I think it was just the math of the current CBA, JR. Like, two players taking up 70% of your salary cap and all that comes with that. I just don't think it was a long-term relationship. And so the reason I bring that up is because I think the Bucks were going to plan for a future without Dame anyway. They had to, the injury forced them to, like, okay, what are we going to do without this guy in this coming season? So I think all of that came together. Hopefully John Horst will speak to this when this is all official in July, JR. But so I think there's a confluence of events there, right? Like, okay, how do we pivot from a 35-year-old point guard who needs the ball? How do we get younger? How do we defend? All of these things, right? And somewhere along the line, late, maybe it wasn't late, but I think it started to come together late, JR, where I think Myles Turner wasn't going to get the offer he thought he was going to get from Indiana. They went to the finals, but the Halliburton Achilles changed things for them. Like, they were ready to be a tax-paying team for the first time in 2 decades. And then it was like, well, wait a minute. Why would we want to pay the tax if Tyrese Halliburton's out and we can't win? And so I think all of a sudden, Myles Turner's available or could be available. And then the Bucks are like, wait a minute, we can sign Kevin Porter Jr. for only $5 million, and Gary Trent we don't need to sign for $7 to $10 million as he was hoping. And wait a minute, this math is working. So I think I was told very late, as actually after the Trent deal, JR, late on the 30th, the Bucks are working on something big. And no one really knew what that was, but the math, people around the league started seeing Bucks have money. And like, what are they going to do with this money? Now, again, no one, I think, thought the waive and stretch was going to happen, but that opened up 30 plus million in cap space, JR. The Bucks were not a cap space team. Dame and Giannis took up $113 million themselves. So yeah, they're paying Dame $22.5 million to not play for them, but they also got $31 million. And suddenly there's money available. And there's some dominoes and trickle effects we're going to get to with these other guys, JR, but it's a little convoluted, but it all just sort of came together in that way. And I think all of those boxes kind of had to be checked, right? Like the team was not successful. They were falling behind in the East. They were slower. Perimeter defense wasn't as good. The Dame thing was probably ending anyway. Oh, now he's hurt. What can we do? Oh, Myles Turner's available because Tyrese Halliburton's hurt. And oh, by the way, JR, Jason Tatum got hurt, and the Celtics just had to destroy themselves. And so the East, you know what I mean? And so I think all of that had to come together for that sort of moment for the Bucks to really reshape their roster, make a stunning move in waiving Dame and signing Myles Turner and reopening a new contention window alongside Giannis Antetokounmpo.
You know, if this was going to end anyway, it feels like certainly a lot of fans are going to categorize the Damian Lillard experience as a failure. You know, that was 2 years. They didn't get out of the first round of the playoffs. Of course, you asterisk that with the injury situations that they faced. You even the regular season, you know, there are injuries to consider. But 2 years went by and Damian Lillard just didn't. I don't want to say didn't work here because he scored more than 24 points a game. Like it's not like he was a nothing burger. They did have some success. They made the playoffs. It's just that, like you said, they seemed to lose ground in the East. It seemed like the move was already a pretty ambitious one, and maybe it was just a big swing. And you know, like you made contact, but it wasn't necessarily the home run you maybe hoped it would be to maintain that level of excellence in the Eastern Conference. Like you said, I don't know if there's anybody to blame. You know, Damian Lillard initially wasn't comfortable here. He had made that kind of clear. The Bucks did, I think, everything they could to make that happen. Whether or not it was the new coach, new system, playing with, you know, alongside another star, it just took forever for him and Giannis to have that chemistry. You saw glimpses of it maybe in year 2 with Doc Rivers, but not enough to say, wow, this is what they envisioned. So as history moves on here, will they look back and say, wow, they screwed that up? They shouldn't have made a move for Damian Lillard. Or was it just so obviously the thing they had to do? I mean, you can kind of tell where I fall here. I think it was just obviously they had to take a big swing or they were risking falling behind anyway. They had to try something different and it didn't work out. And maybe they come through it kind of in the same place. I don't know. But how is history going to remember the Damian Lillard era?
Yeah, he was a 2-time All-Star game MVP. The team did win the NBA Cup. I realize in the moment, it's people kind of laugh. I think at history, you know, 5 years when Giannis is retired and Dame's retired, and whenever that is, there's going to be 10 NBA Cup champions or 11 or 12, and the Bucks are going to be one of them, right? And so I'm not going to discount something that's new. That's relevant. It's the only championship in Damian's career, and he helped the Bucks get it. By beating Oklahoma City in convincing fashion, by the way, like the NBA champions, right? So, yeah, I think they didn't win 50 games. They did not advance out of the first round. And this was just, I think, JR, it was just I think it was on paper the right move to extend the window. Because Dame Lillard, I mean, even Drew Holiday would say, like, Damian Lillard, yeah, you got it. I'd trade me for Damian Lillard. Like, Drew's that kind of guy. It just, everything about it was the wrong time. Adrian Griffin was not the right coach for this. Like, if I think, JR, if we talk about dominoes, like, if Dame was acquired in June and not October, it's a different head coach, and maybe this starts differently. Dame was very open about to me, to many others, about his personal situation. That wasn't easy. You know, it was a real thing, right? You know, his kids being 2,000 miles away, going through a divorce. So you had this coaching thing, two different things. Chris not healthy, Giannis not healthy, Dame not healthy. Like, yeah, JR, just it didn't work. Like, the goal was to compete for championships, and they did not do that. However, I don't think there's anyone at fault. Like, Giannis strained a calf and missed the playoffs last year, and like they would have won 50 plus games and been a higher seed. Dame strains an Achilles and hurts his knee in the playoffs. Chris needs ankles surgery. You know what I mean? Like, so that I think it was just a great idea and a big swing that turned into a chopper, you know, big hop over short, and you legged out a double, right? Like, you get the two bases. Maybe you drove in a run because let's give them the NBA Cup trophy, right? But it just wasn't. It didn't get to where anyone wanted, and I think it's what I think they were going to move on one way or another, and I don't know what that would have looked like, and there's no point in guessing, but yeah, I think looking back, it'll just say, wow, like that didn't quite work. But there's so many reasons why, and it's not on Dame, it's not on Giannis, it's not on. I don't think it's on Adrian or Doc. I think the timing was just bad, and then bad luck followed.
Number 0 will not hang in the rafters at Pfizer Forum. Number 11 might. We're going to talk about that in a second, because the Bucks did end up perhaps using the money that they're saving by waiving Damian Lillard to acquire Myles Turner, who has spent a decade with the Indiana Pacers. He's been a very productive player. The Bucks know this firsthand. They saw the havoc that he wreaked in each of the last two first rounds of the playoffs, and, you know, during the regular season as well. I read this because Brook Lopez, the aforementioned number 11, is gone. He went to the Los Angeles Clippers. I think we all saw that coming, that his very, very nice tenure in Milwaukee was coming to an end, you know, getting in the final twilight of his career. And I read that as, okay, they just replaced Brook Lopez with a younger Brook Lopez, a guy who can shoot the basketball, a guy who is an elite rim protector, and presumably a guy who can throw up some lobs to Giannis Antetokounmpo, because sure saw a lot of those to Tyrese Halliburton. It feels like he's comfortable doing that sort of thing. It feels like it is a really, really good fit. They're paying $104 million to make it fit, so I hope it's a good fit for the Bucks. Interesting player, not an all-star, but a productive guy. Like, I think when we saw this news cross that the Bucks had signed him, it's like, John Horst did it again. You know, he found the perfect guy. You know, the price tag is not unreasonable. It's not, it's not nothing, but it's not unreasonable. So this is their big acquisition, presumably from the offseason. Tell me how you think Myles Turner fits, and if I'm reading that correctly, if this is purely the new Brook Lopez, if it really is as simple as that.
I mean, there's a lot of similarities. You know, shockingly, Brook Lopez was 10 years into the league and 30 years old when the Milwaukee Bucks signed him in 2018, and Myles Turner is 10 years in the league and just turned 29. The Bucks are younger. And he is a stretch big that fits alongside their best player in Giannis Antetokounmpo. He will block shots. He led the league twice in blocks, where we heard that before. He shoots the three, right? He'll get out of the way offensively. I don't know if Myles could carry a game offensively like Brook could, you know, when, you know, the hashtag Brooklyn Brook at times when needed could give you 28, right? I don't know if Myles Turner can do that, but I don't, you know, we'll see if he's needed to. So it's unfair to Myles as his own individual to say you're next or you're a replacement, but it is true in that way. And so, look, it's about fitting Giannis and making him as good as possible, which then can elevate everyone else, JR. And yeah, stretch five who can shoot, and you all get the added benefit of decimating, you know, a rival who has beaten you first round of the playoffs the last 2 years. Like, there's a kind of a double win there, I think, if you're the Bucks. And salary wise, yeah, like, okay, it's a 4-year deal, 3 years really with the option. He is not making $30 million a year, I believe, if my math is correct. So the Bucks have sort of, fallen in line, JR, with the rest of the league. We're talking about Dame making $54 million. Chris was making, he opted in this year at 33. Like, the Bucks have gotten younger, they've gotten cheaper. And while they sent out a couple of second rounders with Pat Connaughton to help make all this work, and we'll get to Pat, they still hold on their first round draft picks into next summer, where if they choose to once again get involved with a big time player with a big salary, they have space financially and then draft assets to do this or do something else, if you will. I mean, all these other little contracts, they are all kind of line up to give the Bucks a lot of flexibility next summer and beyond. So yeah, Myles Turner, best free agent center available, arguably the best true unrestricted free agent available. Big move by the Bucks, big swing by the Bucks. And I'd argue, JR, like, yeah, he's not a star, but if you look at the best versions of the Bucks, go back to 2018. What and I think I've been talking about this on the podcast. Like, who thought Brook Lopez was going to be a core member of a title team? Who thought Pat Connaughton or Bobby Portis and Bryn Forbes in 2020? Like, we called Drew and Chris and Giannis a big three, but in the scope of the NBA, they were not a big three. Like, Drew had gone to one All-Star game. Chris had gone to a couple, but really was like the hometown big guy, right? Like, so the Bucks have sort of now come back to where the rest of the league are, maybe what made them successful. Smart veteran moves that fit around the best player, that don't max you out financially, and didn't cost all your draft assets. They've done this before. They've won like this before. And I think they're trying to do that again. And Myles Turner, obviously a big piece of that.
Yeah, I mean, just Oklahoma City and Indiana in the finals here. They're a superstar player. I guess that's not really completely fair. Like, OKC has Holmgren, Indiana had Siakam and Halliburton, but there was more of a cohesive unit around them. Guys like Jalen Williams, who people haven't really heard of, are contributing on a high level. Like, that's kind of what it takes, especially in the modern NBA. And I don't discount what you said earlier about taking something big from Indiana. Like, they're legitimately one of the major contenders left, along with maybe the Knicks and the Cavs. And if the Bucks, who I am led to believe, based on these moves, really believe they can contend in the East next season, you deconstruct them a little bit further with already Halliburton out, and that's just one less real big deal to deal with. Now, who knows? The Frankenstein that is Atlanta could rise up and become something too. I don't know. They're all remodeled.
Yeah, well, Jay, sorry to interrupt, but I think that's also part of this. Like, nothing happens in a vacuum, right? Like, Dame gets hurt, the Bucks lose. Oh my God, the world's on fire. Start the Giannis rumor engine for the 7th straight year in a row. But yeah, like Boston, Jason Tatum got hurt, and the second apron forced them to trade 2 more starters off their championship team, and Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis. They're losing 2 bench players in Luke Cornett and likely Al Horford. They will not be the same. They might still be like competitive. I mean, they've got good players and a good coach. Indiana, of course, is without Halliburton, and now they've lost 2/5 of their starting lineup that went to the finals. And to your point, like, yeah, Atlanta is interesting. I think Orlando will be better, and let's give props to Cleveland. I think they'll be good. But yeah, suddenly, JR, it's like Cleveland. If you look at the standings, it's Cleveland, Knicks, Bucks, right? And then there's like Detroit, Orlando. And so if the goal was to, again, and the Knicks obviously are changing head coaches, and who knows what's going to happen.
And Detroit's better than I gave them credit for. Like, Detroit could be a problem. And
so you're looking at, a downshifting of Boston and Indy, an upshifting maybe of Atlanta, Orlando. But the Bucks are now back into that mix, JR, where 2nd seed, 3rd seed, are they going to? I don't think they'll overtake Cleveland in like a regular season race. There's that, but yeah, they're back in it, and they have the best player in the East. And any series they go into, Giannis is the big boss, right? Like, there's no, the teams that beat the Bucks in the playoffs tend to go to the finals in the East. And so, if they're better suited to handle that postseason and be healthy, JR, yeah, the Bucks, it's open, right? And that was always the irony, right? It was, the East is wide open. Giannis should leave. Like, that never made sense on a practical level. And clearly the Bucks felt the same way. And here they are with a really good chance to, again, have a top 3 seed, home court advantage for a couple rounds and continue, to contend around their best player.
The Brook Lopez reinvention is one of the great stories of Bucks history. He's a guy who didn't make any 3-pointers. He got with Kenny Atkinson. They figured out, I can do this. 7-8 years of his career, 8 years. He makes like 3 total and none in the first 6. And then he's well over 1,000 3-pointers for his career. Many, many of those Bucks. Do you think his number ends up in the rafters? We won't spend a lot of time on that. I enjoy talking about that. I know most people we have bigger fish to fry, but I think they got to put it up there, Jim. I think they have to. They got to bring him back.
You should hike. Can you link somewhere in here our jersey thing conversation? Because I feel like, I hate to say this, but probably not. I think Brook is going to fall victim to the sort of poor decisions of retired numbers many years ago.
Straight up. I mean, all respect to Bob Lanier, but if Bob Lanier is up there, Brook Lopez should be up there. The thing is, should Bob Lanier be up there? I
think that's part of this, right? Do you put Brook up there? Do you do one of those where you wait till they're all done and it's like Brook, Chris, and Giannis and
Chris and Giannis have to be. So then they're
Drew. Yeah, Drew's only here a couple years. So look, obviously Giannis, I think, weighed in on social media. He would love to see it up there. Brook, I think, plans on playing much longer, so he probably won't entertain that the next time we see him. But it was a great look, JR. Again, we talk about windows. That era of the Bucks had from 18 to 23, which is pretty good. We can argue what happened in 19 with Toronto. We can obviously the bubble and the pandemic and 23 with Giannis and the Heat. But that group was so good for so long. And that's a good run. And, now it's just Giannis and Bobby left. And at some point it was going to end. And, Brook signed a backup deal with the Clippers, JR. That's where he's at in his career now. Had the Bucks been looking if Dame were healthy, I think they're looking for maybe a scoring guard, a point. I don't know if they're trading him for a center. I think Brook maybe would have finished out here if they would, maybe. But great player, great reinvention. His career arc to me, JR, is when they write the history of the game changing and the stretch big. Brook's got a chapter because it's just what he did and then how teams emulated that and wanted to find that. Big men who wanted to be that. It's pretty incredible. He's look, he won a title. So he is part of the all-time Bucks greats.
Yeah. One of the other moves they made on Tuesday to make this happen was to send away another member of that core to some degree, and that's Pat Connaughton. Shipped him out to New Orleans with a couple second-round draft picks, the player capital equivalent of a 6-pack, I think. Here, if you could just take some extra furniture off my hands, we'll compensate you kindly. Pat Connaughton obviously played a pretty big role on those teams. He has not been a consistent member of the rotation even over the past couple of years. He was making a lot of money. It feels like this is a paperwork thing that they had to achieve, but Pat Connaughton was very popular here. You look at our stories that we have written, that you've written over the course of the day, sort of behind the curtain, but the Pat Connaughton story is doing as well or better than everything else, including a story about waiving Damian Lillard. So I find that funny. I don't think there was really any scenario where Pat Connaughton was going to play on this year's Milwaukee Bucks, but I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that particular departure?
Yeah, I alluded to it earlier, JR, when I said, did anyone know that this unknown reserve from Portland would become, a guy who was on the court and helping win finals games, right? And so you become a fan favorite by your play. Obviously, he was a hustle guy, a glue guy. You know, you had bench mob, Planet Pat, slam dunk contests, like, you know, charity golf tournament at Steve Stricker's event in Madison with Andy North. Obviously, his foundation refurbishing courts that needed it in schools and gyms in Milwaukee that needed it. You know, here's a guy who, you know, has been here 7-8 years and was, you know, interwoven, right, JR, with the community. And sometimes that word gets thrown around a little bit with athletes, right? And it's not to discount other people's charitable endeavors. But Pat, I think, got his fingers in probably deeper than many. And so, yeah, a very popular guy. And you know, yeah, picked up his option, $9.4 million. Like, he was, you're right, out of the rotation, you know, early 30s, the athleticism not quite there. The 3-point shot began to disappear. Can still play a little bit, of course, you know, his career's not over. But yeah, like, the $9.4 million needed to be moved to help make this money work with Myles Turner. And so he's going to go to Charlotte, be reunited with Charles Lee, former Bucks assistant. But yeah, it's not surprising to me that folks want to read about Pat or see, you know, what's involved there. And I think and he's part of a title team, JR. So along with all that stuff, like, I'm sure once they do their reunion and, you know, the 10-year reunion 5 years from now, Giannis, Bobby are probably still playing, but everybody else might be, you know, coming back in sweatsuits or maybe ties, whatever it may be. And Pat, you know, is going to get one of the loudest ovations because he's just one of those guys. And again, all time, you know, those times come for role players like that. But yeah, I think, you know, big, you know, big player, big person in the community in that way.
Yeah, pretty confident I said he was going to New Orleans, which is not true. He's going to Charlotte because New Orleans, those two are completely linked in my head because they were the New Orleans Hornets, the Charlotte Bobcat, like, all of this stuff just coagulates in my head and I cannot separate them. Like, oh, he's going to the Hornets. They're in New Orleans, even though I've seen the Pelicans for years and years, whatever. It's just a problem. Meanwhile, before the Myles Turner acquisition, sure felt like the Bucks were just completely running it back. They got, you know, Jericho Sims even later on Tuesday ended up re-upping with the Bucks on a 2-year deal, which I thought was kind of interesting. Taurean Prince, to my surprise, actually is coming back. Bobby Portis, not to a lesser surprise, wasn't able to find maybe the big cash in deal, and he is back on a multi-year deal. Kevin Porter Jr. is back with the Milwaukee Bucks. Gary Trent took $7.5 million over 2 years. Gary Trent, sir, I mean, I don't know how they got him to do that. I want you to explain that one first and foremost, because I don't understand how somebody of his skill was able to only get that much money over a 2-year deal. I mean, I love Milwaukee in the winter, but like, that man must really love Milwaukee in the winter. All these guys are back, and I knew there'd be some turnover. You know, I thought there'd be maybe a little more turnover than there has been, particularly because Taurean Prince, I didn't expect him to be back. But the Trent signing for dirt cheap essentially makes it easier to do some of these other things. So I don't know if there's more to it than that, or what, or, you know, maybe legitimately people just don't want a young guard who can do what he can do. You can kind of go through those guys if you want. What stands out? What really strikes you about all those guys coming back?
Yeah, I think Gary Trent Jr. is probably the one that maybe caught most people by surprise. And again, I mentioned him at the top because I think when he re-signed for that dollar value, it sort of, the Bucks have money now.
Yeah.
I think he surely wanted more money. Like, you know, it is a slight raise over the minimum last year for cap nerds. It's a 120% raise is the maximum allowed. They don't have bird rights on him, but they could have broken up a non-taxpayer exception, and that's what we thought. We thought, you know, maybe $7 million for Gary and maybe 4 or 5 for Kevin Porter Jr. or whatever. And so the fact that Trent, you know, clearly he didn't find that market either, though, JR. Like, you're searching around, like, right now as we record this, I mean, Ty Jerome got somehow $9 million a year. Sam Merrill got $9 million. Like,
Sam Merrill making $9 million.
Good for Sam Merrill, right? Karis LeVert, I think, took advantage of the Malik Beasley situation and got $14 million. But the shooting guard. So there's a couple like questionable things, but then again, like Sam Merrill, Ty Jerome, those were signing. Sam Merrill stayed. It was an extension. Whatever. Like I think it's the Bucks had to have been pleasantly surprised. Maybe not surprised. Maybe they knew that Gary would come back on that. And then, Kevin Porter Jr., I think is the other one. He came back at like $5.5 million, 2 years, 10.5, kind of same deal, JR, where I can see, maybe him having more of a market. He can play point guard. He once had an $84 million deal in his hands. As a guy who, could potentially be a fringe all-star, like people thought that at one point. So those two guys, I think, JR, are the big returners because that's your starting backcourt. KPJ is now, the scoring point guard that needs to be, the consistent nightly guy next to Giannis, the guy who can get you 30 if he needs to. Gary Trent, I think we saw the best of him in the playoffs. Can he be that consistently? I guess we'll find out as this offense they run. Now, this is not to discount Bobby Portis. You're right. I mean, he made it very clear in his appearances over the summer. He wanted to get paid. He did get a raise. He did get a multi-year deal of $44 million. There's nothing to sneeze at. And so he's back again for a couple more years. And, I think, his opt-out and return probably signaled to the league, JR, that, the Bucks were serious about, like, still contending, keeping it running. Like, you need good players, and Bobby's a good player. Obviously, we know that. We know what he brings. So I think those three guys to start were big signings for the Bucks, or re-signings, if you will. Lower level, Taurean Prince, it's a minimum deal. Led the league in three-point shooting for a long time. Clearly can play alongside Giannis. I think there are some deficiencies there on defense that may be overexposed. Doc Rivers should not put him on Trae Young or Tyrese Halliburton anymore. Like, hopefully that's done with. And Taurean is in a more role suitable for him. He obviously Darvin Ham, a lot of jokes online, like, and I did hear that actually, that like as long as Darvin was with the Bucks, like Taurean would have a home here.
Well, and they're going to win the NBA Cup as they have done.
So I think as long as Taurean's put in a better role consistently, I think that's fine as a minimum veteran signing. Jericho Sims is your backup big now, right? Like, he can't shoot. If he can hold on to the ball, he's a good rebounder. See if he can develop as a rim protector a little bit. The Bucks have liked him. That's fine. Minimum signing. Gary Harris is interesting. He's probably, I know, JR, I think Gary Harris is in the boat with like Lonnie Walker the fourth, and some of these guys that like Bucks fans in the backcourt have like craved for like 8 years.
Oh yeah, Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah, like oh, what about this guy? Like, and Gary became available because Orlando declined his team option when they traded for Desmond Bane. He'll be 31. I think think of him as like the DeLon Wright kind of signing from a year ago, like another guard. You're kind of rolling the dice that he's still got some stuff left in his legs.
DJ Augustine? Are we talking about somebody who's getting traded before?
Well, he's a minimum. I think Augustine obviously was a salary. It was a much bigger salary back then. And so Gary, I think, gives you a little bit of a backup to Gary Trent and AJ Green, etc. So, that's fine. That's a minimum signing. That's fine. I think, the Bucks, on paper, you're right, Jared, it looked like they were going to just like run it straight back. I think we can have this conversation later. There's a lot on Doc Rivers right now to run this the right way or a different way. I don't think you can try to be the big team that you started with. They're younger, JR. Like, I just rolled through this list, like, of your top 8 guys, Giannis is the oldest one.
Yeah.
Giannis is the old guy.
Yeah.
So this team has really pivoted quickly, beginning with the trade deadline moves of last February. I know I haven't talked about Kyle Kuzma. Again, I think maybe that's a different conversation, but
we don't have to do that.
I think Doc and the coaching staff, it is now, I mean, it's been on them, and we can quibble about why the Dame thing didn't look great all the time, or the Chris thing, or whatever. But yeah, like, this is now a young team or a younger team, and they've got to play differently and defend differently. But I think on paper they're a better team and than they were, when they lost in the first round.
Here is something they don't have: people to handle the basketball. I mean, you mentioned Kevin Porter. Maybe we have a point guard, point Giannis coming up. They don't have point guards. Like, Damian Lillard's gone. They rescinded the qualifying offer for Ryan Rollins, so he's out. Well, presumably, I don't know. He might be back.
Yeah, I think that's a cap thing, JR. Like, to make the center work. Like the offer hold, it's like a cap hold. So I would not be shocked if Ryan Rollins is back on like a standard minimum deal, as opposed, which is like a slight pay cut. But you're right. I mean, that's a mechanic that's going to have to happen.
Well, and also they need point guards. They got to have somebody to do it. Now, maybe the creativity on Doc Rivers that you're talking about involves some of those names that we've said. Maybe there's more. I don't know, AJ Green, Gary Harris, who's a shooting guard. Like, I don't know, but
I think this. I mean, shockingly, because us locals, we don't know anything. I mean, I think I wrote right after Game 5 in Indianapolis that this offense was going to be very heliocentric around Giannis. Like, this is, I think we're going to see. Now, granted, he's not going to play 48 minutes a game. He's not going to play 82 games. So, yes, there are going to be questions to answer. Kevin Porter Jr., I think, to me, is clearly the second, like, ball handler. We'll see if Ryan Rollins is back. I do think they have. Let's say Ryan is back. Let's just count him in. Let's slot him in as re-signing.
Sure.
Ryan's going to play. Clearly,
he can start. Maybe
they do have room if they can get their second round draft pick, to stay in Europe for a year, which there is belief that he will. They do have room for one more veteran signing. Is that Thanasis or is that a point guard? I don't know. We'll find out.
Thought about Thanasis.
So if it's a point guard, then I think this question's answered. Mm-hmm. If it's Thanasis, then it's a by committee type situation. I as we record the share, I don't know where or if all the point guards have signed yet or not. But I do think, let's just say for now, it's Giannis, it's Kevin Porter Jr., probably Ryan Rollins next, and then the group. And who knows, maybe, I mean, Doc really doesn't seem to like Andre Jackson Jr. in a lot of these lineups, but if that changes over the summer, Andre, that was a skill set of his at UConn. Like, it's not pretty all the time, but he's a guy who can push it. And honestly, again, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but Kyle Kuzma, again, if the on-off with Giannis, like, Kyle's a guy who can push it in transition. So the question's answered for sure, JR, very valid. But I do think that's at least the framework, I think, of where they're looking at.
Will Kyle Kuzma be here when the season gets going? What do you think?
I think so. I think, look, he makes $20 million. They did trade Chris Middleton for him. And maybe there's belief that a full summer and a proper role for him gives him a better start. Like, I think there's like a lot of bad luck with Kyle once he got here, meaning Bobby Portis got suspended. Jericho Sims missed 4 weeks with an injury. And Giannis missed some time with an illness, I want to say, JR. And all of a sudden, Kyle Kuzma's playing the 4, the 5, and he was having a terrible, like, his career worst shooting season. And while they tried to say, like, you're not replacing Chris, it was hard not to think like he thought about that. right? Like they brought me here to be a guy, and I feel like maybe he pressed a little bit. So we'll see. I think, I mean, 20 million, we'll see. I guess we'll see. Right now, I think he's on the team. $23 million, I want to say. And maybe they think, he can kind of fit in more nicely, I guess, with a little longer runway and maybe not as much pressure as like he came in February.
To keep it heliocentric, then we should talk about Giannis a little bit. You've said, and I mean, again, it doesn't seem to matter how much we try to bang the drum at jsonline.com, in private conversations that I've had with, like, even my parents. My mom called me today and she was like, I thought they were going to trade Giannis. And I'm like, Mom, first of all, read the Journal Sentinel, but also secondly, just talk to me. I've tried to tell this to everybody who listens. They're not gonna trade Giannis. But I do feel it's important that we should at least ask the question, if not to answer it for the fifth time. I presume this means Giannis isn't going anywhere this year, possibly even beyond that. But at least for this year, it sure seems like that door has closed. Maybe even national writers will notice that for 2025, 26. Maybe not. I don't know. But what does all of this mean for Giannis Antetokounmpo?
Yeah, no, I don't think the door is going to close, JR. I'm sure we'll hear about how, he's upset that Brook is gone, which is, I'm sure, true. They're very, very good.
He was upset Dame is gone. Even
very, very good friends. Respects Dame a ton. I think multiple things can be true. I think as a human, you could be like, man, I'm sad. I miss that dude. I think as a player, though, Giannis is a pragmatic guy. He knows what's happened, which is they've been run off the court by the Pacers. Brook, for as great as he is, has lost a step and has been unplayable in certain matchups. He knows they were old in a lot of ways. And so, the team, and sure, I'm sure we'll hear about, well, we'll see how they do. And that's fair to a degree. Like I wrote this when the season was over. He was and has been dissatisfied, JR. They've gotten worse since 2023. They've gotten worse. Like whatever the hires of the coaches were and whatever the intent was and injuries, like they have backslid. And that's a fair thing. So as much as I like tease a little bit about like, the wish casting of Giannis everywhere but Milwaukee, it is legitimate to say he ended the year like, I mean, come on, guys, like we're getting further and further away from the end goal. And so he was never where, the other, like the talking heads and all that stuff was. He was never there. But he wanted to see. And look, and again, I think Bucks fans know this as well. He did this before they traded for Jrue Holiday, right? There was the stories after, I want to say, before they traded for Dame. I mean, play elsewhere. Like, so he has applied this pressure. And ownership and John Horst to date have relieved that pressure with massive moves. And Giannis has then followed, at least previously, with extensions. He is not extension eligible till next summer. So eligible, excuse me. So we'll see. Look, if the Bucks win 55 games and go to the Eastern Conference Finals,
no-brainer.
And I'm guessing Giannis will sign the Supermax, and the Bucks will sign, Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent Jr. to longer-term extensions, right? And then we get a year off of the Giannis stuff. But it would seem like he's, the team has been remolded, rebuilt around him properly. And I don't think there's many questions there, JR. I don't think these are guesses. Like the skill sets for Turner and Brook mirror one another. We already know what KPJ and Gary Trent and AJ Green and Bobby Portis and we know what that looks like already. Taurean Prince to a lesser degree, Gary Harris, like that skill set to a lesser, we already there's not a really mystery there. And then, now it's just up to Doc Rivers and the coaching staff to to find a defense, right, that make this work, and ball handlers and some offense, right, where in the non-Giannis minutes. I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about that this coming year, JR.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Giannis is, he's back, and they'll see if they can contend and get to where they want to go. But no, I don't think this is the end of it, unfortunately. Until he signs another extension next summer.
Yeah.
I think, Bucks fans will still just kind of have to deal with kind of that noise, so to speak.
Yeah, that might be the final frontier, because he's 32 at that point. And then obviously, like, LeBron is into his 40s, so like it's possible, but he doesn't play like LeBron. Like, you could see this drying up finally, as maybe his skills degrade a little bit. But Bucks fans don't want that either. You don't want to see Giannis at anything less than what he has been. MVP caliber player year in and year out. What else, Jim? This is it. That kind of wraps up our very, very busy day. What else are you thinking about? Is there's probably a move or two still to come? What's still on your mind?
Yeah, let's see what happens with Ryan Rollins. Chris Livingston is a young player, non-guaranteed deal. Andre Jackson has a non-guaranteed deal, at least through the beginning of July. I guess we could see if the Bucks don't want those guys, free up other. I don't know. They need low-cost players at the end of the roster. It's probably a good idea to have some young guys that like you're still sort of developing. The draft pick, I'm sort of interested. The full expectation that I've heard around the league is he is going to go back to Europe for more seasoning.
Yeah. We didn't even say his name. I feel bad. We didn't even talk about the draft guy.
Yeah, I'm not going to disrespect him. I haven't studied his name to pronounce that correctly just yet. But we'll see. He's another teenager, fourth teenager John Horse has drafted of his last 5 picks. We'll see, right? I don't know if there's another like big move. I'd say the Bucks, look, they have consistently tried to field winners around Giannis since he's become an MVP. I think this summer is no different. I would say this. We'll try to get into some of this stuff at jsonline.com going forward. Maybe when this is all official, we kind of know all the hard numbers in the roster. But they sent out 31 and 32 second-round picks with Pat. That's no small thing. That's a lot of sweetener for moving Pat's salary. They got a salary back that's going to go to Europe to make Myles work. But they still have those first-round picks, JR. And once you hit next summer, like player options, all these guys are going to really decline those for the most part. All of a sudden, you're going to have 3 future first-round picks to use. Like, they could be a cap space team again. You have bird rights for maybe these young players who are just hitting their primes, not yet 30. The Bucks actually, JR, talk about a gap year or one like last year. We might look at this and say, like, last season was the gap year.
Yeah.
We'll see how it plays out, but they have done some stuff, even with Dame's dead money counting for the next, 4 seasons beyond this one. It's actually a workable chunk of salary. And, maybe that'll come back to bite them in 3 years if Kevin Porter Jr. is like a superstar, right? Where it's like, oh my goodness, like Giannis and Kevin need to make a lot of money, but I think they would gladly have that problem 4 years from now, because it would mean like a lot of winning maybe and a lot of success and that type of thing. So that I'll leave it there where a lot happened. The Bucks pivoted. They're a much younger team with real assets to come if they want to continue to maybe add higher level talent in the form of sending out future first. Like that's all kind of on the table as this team goes forward.
He is Jim Owczarski. Everything he has is at jsonline.com. You'll want to stay up to date with what's going on because this isn't over, as we've discussed, but the Bucks roster has certainly started to take shape. These signings will become official on July 6th. There's this very strange, lengthy moratorium period where what's happening, but you can't. It's not actually official until July 6th. But again, jsonline.com is the place to be. Thank you for listening to the Point Forward podcast. We'll be back as news allows, and talk to you again then. Bye bye.